morning, I'm Gioavanna Badalassi. I will be your moderator. I'm from LeTSGEPs project, and I am a gender budgeting expert. That's the reason for which I'm your moderator in this panel. So this morning we had panel number 1, which was on structural and sustainable change. Then we had panel 2, which is on diversity and intersectionality. And now in panel 4, we will have a focus on stakeholders' involvement. And now in panel 3, we are focusing now on gender budgeting and GEPs, state of the art and drivers for a wider diffusion of gender budgeting. So this panel stems obviously from the LeTSGEPs experience, and the crucial point of our project was that of implementing obviously gender equality plans in our 6 implementing partners, but we had the ambition of integrating the methodology of gender equality plans with gender budgeting. And this was really challenging for us because gender budgeting has been developing since the 80s with a completely different path than gender equality plans. Gender budgeting was developed mainly about national policies, territorial policies, national governments, and then our panelists will explain this better. While gender equality plans obviously developed in the academic field and all the issues concerning gender equality within the research policies and areas. And what was really a strange thing was that most of gender budgeting experiences were developed and implemented by people from the academia. So they were studying how to implement gender budgeting in national institutions, but not in their own institution. So that's really a strange thing that happened. So this was the challenge of our project, and in this panel specifically, we have invited 2 great opinion leaders and academic representatives and great, role models and 2 people that I have a great admiration for, admire very much. And we have invited Angelo Hagan and Paula Rodríguez Modroño to share with us their experience and their thoughts about how to talk about money, because that is gender budgeting. We talk about dirt money, how we can match the individual experience that every researcher, every professor has concerning how to manage the money with the funds for research and whatever, with the collective perspective of budgets. Because we discovered in LeTSGEPs that every people involved from the academia and research field had a certain level of experience in dealing with money. I have money for research, I have money to pay students, assistants, researchers, experts, and whatever. But the moment in which we were talking about the collective money, that is the budget of the institution, there was a sort of panic of saying, well, what are we talking about? So today we have this ambition of matching together these 2 different levels and matching together the academic experience of studying gender budgeting outside and taking it into the institution. So we are talking about all these issues with Angelo Hagan. She's a professor of equalities and public policy at the Department of Social Sciences at Glasgow Caledonian University. She's a long-standing member of the United Kingdom and Scottish Women's Budget Groups, great women's budget groups, and the European Gender Budgeting Network, a great European Gender Budgeting Network, I have to say. She's the independent chair of the Scottish Government's Equality and Human Rights Budgets Advisory Group and a member of various government advisory bodies. She's also Deputy Director of WISE, Center for Economic Justice at Glasgow Caledonian University. Then Paula Rodríguez Modroño, she's a senior lecturer, Department of Economics, Quantitative Methods and Economic History, Pablo de Olavide University in Sevilla. She's the director of the Center for Interdisciplinary Studies on Gender and Feminism, the Gender Observatory of GEP, and the Master Program in Gender and Equality at her university. She's president of the Spanish Association of Radical Economics, and this is very important for us to know about this. And she was the head of entrepreneurship programs at the regional government of Andalusia. So these are two great experiences that we want to hear about your opinion on 4 main topics that are this one, key discussion points. So the first point is the outcomes of gender budgeting in decision making. So what do you think of the real impact of gender budgeting on the institutions? So because whenever we have experimented gender budgeting, whether it is a national government, a regional government, university obviously, municipalities or regions, we have always seen that we can reach a technical point, we can widen the technical issues, technical analysis and whatever, but after that, when we touch the political level, somehow the gender budgeting process stops because we are touching the true power of money. How can we touch that kind of power? So this is the first question. The second issue is about your personal experience in managing funds, in managing money, in gathering money and funds for your research. So you can show us how you had this approach to the money for your activity since you were a young researcher until now that you are professors. And the third issue concerns the hidden costs of gender inequality in research. We have seen, going through the gender budgeting analysis of our implementing partners, that there are so many hidden costs of gender inequality. One of the main issues of gender budgeting is that we go through all the budget items as a sort of checklist, and we wonder for every budget item which might be the gender impact. So in this way, we adopt a full gender mainstreaming perspective through all the budget items of the institution, and we don't only focus on the main issues like careers, work-life balance, violence and harassment, and so on. This widens the perspective a lot, and this touches the true power of money because we talk also about the gender procurement in suppliers and so on. So it's important to see how, in your experience, and to hear from you, how do you feel, do you see in your experience the hidden cost of gender inequalities like unpaid care work, academic housekeeping, unequal access to resources for research, and all these hidden costs are not only a matter of inequalities, but are also a matter of loss of talents, improductive research, and so on. The last question concerns drivers for a wider diffusion of gender budgeting. So in your opinion, according to your experience, how can we involve more stakeholders? How can we widen the impact of gender budgeting? And somehow, how can we share the power? Because whenever we share the use of the budget, we are sharing effectively the power of it. So I know that the first one to have her intervention is Angela. So please, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gioavanna. Good afternoon, everyone. This is possibly the first Scottish accent you've heard today. So if I'm speaking too quickly or start to become too Scottish, then let me know. Thank you very much to Tindara and the LeTSGEPs team for having me be part of this project on the advisory board for some time, and thank you to everybody today. I keep changing my comments as to what I meant to be saying just now on the basis of what I've been hearing this morning. So I hope to manage some level of coherence over the next 5 or 10 minutes or so. As I try to address the questions that Gioavanna has both put to us and offered a lot of has indicated a lot of the reality and the context in trying to implement gender budgeting. And in thinking about the outcomes of gender budgeting, trying to think about, well, what is gender budgeting? That process of examining the allocation of resource to then secure a more effective distribution of resource to that, of course, shared political and organisational goal of the advancement of gender equality. And I say, of course, there somewhat facetiously, because we know that that is not necessarily a shared goal, or at least it's not a first order goal of government at whatever level, or of the governance of many institutions. There's a lot of window dressing. There's a lot of cloaking in the language of gender equality, and a lot of presentation of gender equality planning. And we all know from our own experiences just how far that goes or doesn't go in terms of organisational behaviours and actions to advance gender equality. And what we also know is that most often resources, money is not talked about, whether at the individual level of a university or at government level. We continue to have this separation of finance as something other, something different from gender equality, from these social goals, apparently, these softer ambitions that we might have. And so part of the argument is always trying to make the case that gender is relevant in public finance decisions at whatever level of government or governance we're talking about. And we also see, I think, an absence of a consideration of resource in frameworks like Athena Swan, the gender equality framework for universities in the UK, and bizarrely, conversely, the Research Excellence Framework, which is the scourge of, well, one of the many scourges of academic life in the United Kingdom, the Research Excellence Framework, by another set of metrics by which we are all measured through an inordinately complex process, I think performs very poorly in terms of looking at how resources are distributed and allocated and what outcomes are achieved through those resources. I also think it does a very poor job in integrating equality and diversity, but I'll come on to that. So what does gender budgeting do? So through that examination of the allocation and redistribution of resources, well, according to the OECD, there are different stages of looking at resources, the ex-ante resource, so what's the analysis of, as Carol Backey would have it, the problem, in inverted commas. Who is affected by what? By X, and in what way? And what relevant and alternative policy responses might there be to this phenomenon? And therefore, what resources can and should be allocated? And they're not always the same question. What resources can is not the same as what resources are available. And the International Convention on the International Convention on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights requires duty bearers to maximise available resources for the progressive realisation of rights. And so looking at what resources are available is quite different from what resources might be made available or might be allocated. So there's some questions again for us to ask within our own institutions. And then we come to the concurrent stage, looking at impact assessment of proposals, trying to apply a gender perspective to resource allocation and setting up gender-related performance objectives. And then the most, in some ways, neglected part of policy implementation. Not always, policy implementation is not always very effective either. But one of the things that is most often overlooked is the ex post, the evaluation and audit. What happened as a consequence of that resource allocation? Did it shift the dial? In what direction? In the right direction, or what modifications need to be made? And we were asked to consider what impact gender budgeting has had on the institutions where it has been applied. Now, there could be a very short answer to that question, because gender budgeting is very rarely applied in many organisations or in many government contexts, but where it is applied and where it is done well. Through that diagnostic and prognostic framing, that the tool of gender budgeting and the various analytical tools we would use within that gives greater visibility of the embedded inequalities within an organisation. It should be about changing the ways of thinking and working, both analytically and conceptually, through examining the outcomes from current resource allocations. And that requires an integration of multivariable analysis, as we were hearing from colleagues in the different panels this morning. But I also think, for our purposes today, focusing on research organisations, it's about understanding the purpose of research and publicly funded research. Publicly funded research, research funded with public money, research funded by the public, research funded by us all. And does research funded in that way reflect society? I think we know the answer to that. Very often we're asked about what are the institutional resistances to incorporating gender budgeting, and I think that is always a very interesting question, because again there's lots of issues there. Is it about knowledge, the level of knowledge, conceptual knowledge, what we're talking about when we talk about gender analysis or gender budgeting? Is it about competence within the organisation? Is it about time and the time pressures that civil service officials, that many other officials and certainly academics and professional services are all under? How much of the knowledge gap is willful ignorance? Do they actually, is there an understanding, but there is a resistance to implementation? But is there also conceptual complexity that we maybe have to work harder at breaking down? And Gioavanna touched on the political resistances. Political leadership and will are essential. And I think we've heard lots of comments over the course of today about political resistance and the political context in which we are trying to articulate some of these proposals, and a context that is becoming increasingly hostile to that. And as I said, and to echo Gioavanna's comments, there's a question about, don't touch the money, this separation of powers, that budgets aren't about people. And that research is about the issue in question, drugs development, transportation, water and sanitation. Both are about people. Securing the realisation of rights and the advancement of equality requires resources. And that requires a transformative paradigm shift that ultimately we're talking about people and the different experiences and lived effects of policy decisions. And so the outcomes when, from gender budgeting. If we look, for example, at yesterday's UK autumn statement, the budget from the UK government, yet again, the particular flavour of government playing its trump card and funding tax cuts by removing funding from public services. Funnily enough, the value of the tax cuts, 19 billion, is the value of the amount of money that's going to be withdrawn from public services over the next wee while. That 19 billion pounds that won't be coming back into public. But if we look the other way and look at the allocation of funds, study after study by Jerome de Henau, Sue Himmelweit and others has shown that for the investment of 2% of GDP in adult social care, we see significant returns across all sorts of economic metrics, not least significant returns in well-being as well. So gender budgeting improves the quality of decision making, the quality of analysis and policy appraisal, and our understanding of current situations, and prompting analysis of the causes of some of the inequalities we've identified and possible responses. And that improved information and understanding of the gendered aspects of the situation and the possible impacts. And I think gender budgeting activates gender mainstreaming because it completes the policy process. Because if we're not talking about resources, then we're not really talking across policy. Would you like me to stop?
Yes. I would hear you. I would listen to you forever. But as I read all of your production literature, but I think it's crucial to underline what you said in your last sentence, because I always mention Diane Elson. She always says, follow the money. So she says, you can talk about policies however you want, but if you can touch the true political will of transformative change the moment you touch the money. So that's the moment in which you transform the aims and objectives in all the performance cycle. I mean, you pay the inputs, then the developing outputs and the outcomes. So that's the reality of doing things. So that's really crucial and important. Thank you very much for this picture, a whole picture about gender budgeting. I hope you have all appreciated this vision that covers everything, I would say. Now, Paula, it's up to you, and I'm very much interested to hear your perspective concerning these issues, because you have a different professional and academic field of research, so I would like to hear from you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to participate in your conference, your joint conference of CALIPER and LeTSGEP. I have been working with gender budgeting mainly at the regional level. As Angela was saying, gender budgeting is a powerful tool, but it's very complex, and it faces many resistances because it's powerful. No, and if it's well done, it's very comprehensive, and it really leads to big changes. So I will start from the last question. I think I'm going to structure my presentation, my examples from the last question, which is which are the key drivers for a wider diffusion of gender budgeting, or for a wider implementation of gender budgeting. I think the first one, and the most important, because it must be the beginning, the initial stage, is political will and political leadership. You need that to be able to start, because it's a complex tool, it's a very powerful tool, and you need a high level commitment to begin with. So usually it's done, you know, from when you have a left-wing party in power. So they are usually the ones that want to evaluate the budgets and to do a fairer distribution of their budgets. But so they are initially initiated by them. But then afterwards, I think it's very important, it's crucial that you introduce legislation and you make it compulsory. Mm-hmm. Yes. So if you manage to do it compulsory and to do gender budgeting compulsory, then it doesn't matter who comes later to power. And we have some examples for this in Spain. For example, we have a gender budgeting mandatory since our famous equality law in 2007, with under the socialist government, it's our Beijing, that law. We have everything after that 2027 equality law. And there, that law established that it's compulsory for every public administration in Spain to include gender mainstreaming principles in laws, in budgets, and public policies in general. So it's compulsory for every level of the administration. So some of them have taken a lot more time to read that article and to realize that it's compulsory, but they are starting to realize it. In that law also we have it states that it's compulsory to do gender impact assessments report in all projects of the administrations. And also we have, and this has been very important, that it's compulsory to have a gender perspective in statistical production. So we had a lot of data because it's compulsory to have that sex disaggregated data and to have a gender perspective in the data. So we solve also that problem. So in reality, at least our gender impact assessment reports are compulsory since that law. And we have had it in Spain since a few years ago. And also now they changed the budgetary law last year, and it's obligatory since 2021. Though, as Angela was saying, I must say that they are gender impact assessment reports of the budget. So they are like ex-ante reports. So we are still at that level, which would be, it's not a full gender budgeting. And also we have some regions that have implemented it. Of course, one of the first ones were the Basque Country, was the Basque Country in around 2002, but also in Andalusia, for example, did it in 2003. And we have gender impact assessment since 2007, and you can go to the webpage and you have the gender budget for every year since then. Even now that we have we are under a right-wing conservative party for the last 4 or 5 years. So once institutionalized, they cannot bring it away. And we have also some examples in other regions, and also in towns like Barcelona initiated also a few years ago, and Madrid did it under the Carmena's mayor, and now under also a conservative party, they are doing the gender budgeting. So it's difficult when it's already institutionalized to take it away. About the universities, let's talk about the old institutions.
I saw you very, self-confident, and now about universities.
About the universities, okay, we are old, very old institutions, so we have had a lot of time to make very exclusionary rules of the game, so they are very difficult to change. We have tried also in Spain to do it in some institutions. They did it in the University of the Basque Country with Yolanda Jubeto in 2005. They did an experiment, but it hasn't had a continuation. And we have done it in my university, profiting that this is not a very big university. We did it. I did an experiment with Tindara, very good, because it was a well-being gender budgeting study of my university. So it was tried to be done as it should be done, looking at and also using a participatory method, asking the students what were their needs, and studying all the budget. And then, but that was like a private initiative that we did just for research. And but our rector also asked us a few years ago to do it. So it was a request by the university, and we did. But as in many universities, we only did the context analysis.
Yes.
So we studied all the budget for the personnel, no, all the academics, which is point. Our main budget. Always in universities is always the highest amount of money goes to pay our salaries and that. But it's not everything, no? It's not a complete gender budgeting. So we need to advance, and we have been able at the university level in Spain to advance a lot, because we have also by law gender equality units in every ministry, and they have to provide data with a gender approach. But also because we have had the advocacy of and the networking of other institutions and feminist groups. And we have been able to be inside and have negotiations with the ministry and with the university. We have two main networks, one network of feminist studies and national level, and one network of all the gender equality units in the universities. And they are sat at the table at the commission with the Ministry of University. And so I think we are being able to change many things. We have also following the requirements and the directions of the European Union. We are trying to promote the integration of gender dimension in research. We are trying to get to achieve gender parity in research teams, and we give more money to teams that are directed by a principal investigator, but we still have to being able to recognize, for example, gender studies as an independent area and to value that research area as others. We haven't managed. We thought that we were going to have it in the law, in the new law for the Spanish universities this summer, but at the end they said they didn't have time and we couldn't manage to achieve that. But we have advanced a lot in detecting what are the problems and how are we in situation. There has been a report about the situation of women in universities. We have done a study of the gender pay gap in 48 universities in Spain. I think the Spanish people know it. Where, for example, they have detected we have still a 12% wage gap in universities in Spain. And that wage gap is, of course, mainly due to the gap in bonus, in premiums related to research, mainly. Okay. Of that gap, 14% is due to the difference in the payments of bonus premiums for research. And also 41%, we have a 41% gap in the amount directly from research projects. Okay. You want me to stop too?
Yes, I'm the bad girl in this situation. Okay. Sorry, but I do hope to give you the floor if we have some time more by the end of the panel. So for those of you who are new to gender budgeting, here we have seen Angela introducing the general overall framework in the overall experience of policies at national level, let's say, with all the process of implementing policies with all these gender equality perspective. Then we went at territorial level with Paula. We saw how it is how it is difficult to stimulate the political will, and when you are at the territorial level, you touch directly the problems, the difficulties, because the connection with the citizens is so close, and you can see directly the people who are the beneficiaries of your policies, which is something that you don't see when you are at national level. So it's a completely different situation. And then you've seen how the territory is crucial to connect with the academic and research field. So this is something that we also experimented in Italy, and there is really a territorial connection at a certain point in which there is a mutual contamination in which university and academia somehow feel that something, this gender budgeting is in the air, and they start, well, let's practice, let's experiment, and so on. So you mentioned some experiences from Spain, and you mentioned also Barcelona. So I'm very happy now, as for a contribution from LeTSGEPs partner, to introduce down there, where is Silvia, our Silvia Donoso Lopez, is that you presenting the ICM experience. ICM is a partner of LeTSGEPs. It's the Institute of Marine Science in Spain. It's the fourth largest research institute of the Spanish National Research Research Council, and it's the largest research institute for marine research. So I would like to ask you about your experience in gender budgeting, and I would like also to share with everybody the impression that I had about ICM the first time I heard about you, because you introduced your gender equality plan in We Are Ambitious. And yes, this is very important for me because, you know, ambition is one of the crucial stereotypes for women. So when we say, well, that woman is ambition, and talking about ambition concerning gender equality for an institution, it's very interesting on my side. So please, Silvia.
Thank you for the introduction, Gioavanna. We were very ambitious. We have a gap with...
Can you please stand up so we can
see
you? Okay, thank you.
Then I cannot read.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, we were ambitious. We have a gap with 8 fields of action and 14 very wide measures. One of them is gender budgeting. For us, one of the main questions was that the gap could not exist outside the mainstream of the institutional management. So we need to ensure that it should be embedded in all processes, including budgeting. We are clear that budget is political. So we follow the money. At least we have been trying to follow the money. So you have to consider that we are not free to decide, because a lot of budgeting decisions are taken at the level of the SIG, of the Spanish National Research Council. So we have sometimes a small space for decision. This is a very particular situation for us. But we have been trying to create the best conditions to have a proper gender budgeting. So at this moment, we think that we can see the money, follow the money. We're trying to touch the money. So one
that's the hard part.
One measure that has been for us very successful is that we have been trying to engender internal funding. We are a CB Ochoa Center, so we have more than 1 million euros for to fund internal initiatives. So for us has been key to introduce criteria to guarantee that all internal competitive calls were gender neutral, to ensure that have no gender negative impact. So we introduced criteria, general criteria in the framework of the calls, but also we have reviewed all individual calls to ensure that no condition, criteria, wherever, had a negative impact in women. So at the end of this process, after 1 year, we have almost 50% of the funds are for women and 50% of the funds are for men. This is something incredible because we have the experience that the criteria always impact negatively in women. So this has been really nice. Also, another thing that has been interesting for us is that we have specific budget for gender actions. We have a specific budget for the GEP and also for the Equality Task Force, which is the mechanism in charge of the GEP. So this was very important because we have money for training, money for bringing very important, nice people that explains nice things. So this is also very important. Next year, we will have money for the contract of a gender expert, which has been an internal fight. So we have this kind of movements that are have impact very positively in the institute. And also one important thing is that we have introduced sex as a control of the expenditures. So we have information, sex disaggregated by sex, about a lot of the expenditures, trainings, travels, conferences. That's the way we have to know where the money is going. So this is more or less the main things that we want to share.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Silvia. So as we see from ICM experience, things happen when you have the money to make them happen. So that's important to think about this thing. I mean, we say, okay, that's obvious. It's not so much obvious when we enter, we put our hands in we ask the administration, please, can we have the budget items? Try and ask. We had so many obstacles in the beginning to have the budget from the detailed budget for the administration. And another important point is not only having the money, but scheduling, programming. They have in ICM, they have a very, very detailed gender equality plan in terms of Gantt, month, objectives, sub-objectives. So it's very important to organize gender equality, not only having as a dream. It's with the gender budgeting, you take on a methodology and a process, which is very crucial and important. So another partner of LeTSGEPs that I would like to talk about the gender budgeting experience is Max Planck. Where is Corinna? Haha, you are there. You were hiding, but I know you are there. So Max Planck, I think most of you know about this institute, is the Germany's premier non-university research organization dedicated to cutting-edge research at 85 Max Planck institutes, and specifically they developed gender equality plan at one of their 85 institute, which is Max Planck Institute for Biological Intelligence. So another thing that was impressive on my side is that while ICM said that we wanted to be ambitious, when talking with you, Corinna, you said, well, at Max Planck, we are competitive. We wanted to win every Nobel Prize in the world. And we have different gender equality issues, and I clearly saw that. So let's talk to us about your experience.
Yes, thank you very much, Gioavanna, for this introduction. And you talk of competitiveness, and I wanted to say to you, yes, we are going first steps in gender budgeting, so to also like set it into perspective maybe. Yes, but first I stand here for two organizations inside the Max Planck Society to make that clear. For the Central Gender Equality Office, which is part of the headquarter administration of the Max Planck Society, which is in charge of all the 85 Max Planck Institutes, and for the Max Planck Institute for Biological Intelligence, which actually implemented a gender equality plan inside LeTSGEPs. So we had two levels of influence at our hands to implement something new. And what was really very new for us was about LeTSGEPs was the gender budgeting point. So gender equality plans had been mandatory for several years inside the Max Planck Society for every institute, also like a criteria to receive certain funding. So that was, yeah, well implemented already, but the gender budgeting part, and especially implementing it into our already existing gender equality plans, that was the new challenge. So what we have done so far. So we were going first steps. First, the really very first step for us was to look into our gender equality plans and to say we have to ensure really the resources for these measures and goals that are in this plan, which seems or sounds quite basic, but it's really, yeah, it's you cannot take that for granted, because it's not only like the fee, for example, for a speaker, which might be 500 euro, 1,000 euro. Well, that can be insured, but it's also really looking what resources do I need, not only in money, but also in time, in personnel resources. So this is very important to always have this in your job to analyze this. And then, Yes, we went further, and for that we already had like really the training from the LeTSGEPs project, which really introduced us to gender budgeting. But we thought we need something additional in the national context. So we thought we really need a gender budgeting expert also that is deep in German public funding, which is really the realm we have to analyze here in our institute. So that was, I think, important. We hired a well-known German expert on the field that really knows German public funding and the German research system, which was quite important, I think, to win the acceptance of the leadership also in our institute. So we had a training here with all the really essential persons. So one director of the institute that is in charge of gender equality, the head of accounting, the head of the personnel department, and also the head of the whole administration, and also some researchers there as well. And then we were discussing different angles of attack, and you know that there are several there in gender budgeting. We were discussing like, how is it decided where their cuts will be made, for example, when there are cuts necessary, for example, because of inflation. We have discussed what are the essential resources that researchers need at the institute to be successful. We, for example, even discussed to analyze how many test animals will be granted to which researcher. Are they granted the amount of test animals that they request or not? Then we thought, oh, well, it's a problem really with animal rights, you know, more test animals is not always better, you know, so, oh, well, we don't know. This is not what we ended up analyzing. So I think what was the indicators we in the end decided on was where we expected to really see a difference for the researchers in their career chances, but also what was feasible, because still we are here at first steps, first insights. And this was, for example, we looked at the hours that certain researchers or researchers by gender were able to use the important instruments and technical support. So hours of usage of microscopes, for example. We looked at third-party funding received or grants really won by researchers by gender. We looked at student assistants per researcher. We looked at laboratory and office space per researcher. So this is really where we are at the moment. And it's about really, the next step for us is understanding this data and to decide what we will do. In the next update of our gender equality plan,
political will be crucial.
Absolutely. Also, like where we can interfere.
Thank you very much, Corinna. As you have seen, the example of Max Planck is a full gender mainstreaming approach. So when working together, talking about the first meetings, we were, you know, using the budget items as a checklist, and she came and said, well, what about laboratories? What about equipment? We, as research centers, we have a huge amount of money for laboratories and equipment, so it's crucial. But what are we going to say? Okay, who is using? So that opened a new field of analysis on who is using the equipment, the laboratories, and which opportunities the use of all these stuff allows for women and for men. And as you see, we have heard the experiences about the two research centers, the ambitious one, the competitive one, and in the research centers without all the teaching part that universities have. We found that there are different dynamics, and it was so hard for us to match together universities that have also all the training and teaching issues together with the research institute even matching and merging the statistics was difficult because everybody was saying, well, this indicator doesn't apply for us, this indicator doesn't apply for us. So it was really a challenging project under this point of view, but it was very satisfactory on our side. So we have seen 2 research centers. Now we close with the 2 universities, so we can see different approaches and obviously different objectives and different goals, but always the same will of achieving gender equality. So the next experience I would like to introduce you is that of our partner, University of Messina. Where is? Okay, thank you. So University of Messina is a state university located in Messina in the south of Italy in Sicily. 12 departments, a long history. They were founded in very long time ago, and sorry.
18th century.
It's not interesting. I'm trying to select what is interesting for you, so that's almost 2,000 people. So it's a very big university with a strong impact, cultural impact on the territory. So that's really important because they also have a connection with the local government and with the support of gender budgeting at local level too. So the floor is yours.
Thanks. Okay, see, Messina has an historical tradition about studies on business economics field. So what we have tried to take us into LeTSGEP path, our added value has been our tradition on business economics studies and trying to create integrated and holistic GEP and trying so to combine our tradition, so our studies, through gender sensitive tools. So at the end, we have achieved the creation of an holistic integrated GEP in which we have put it in the GEP, so the Gender Equality Plan, and the PAP, so the Positive Action Plan, and finally our strategic, the performance plan. So at the end, we achieved a tool, a strategic tool used in order to plan our action, our strategic action through the gender sensitive goals. Both. Fine. Okay.
So what is important is that with the University of Messina we discovered how to integrate all the performance reports that are already in use in Italy because of our laws, of our national procedures, how to match with gender equality plans and gender budgeting procedures. There was also there was also this side of investing in future generation and on students, because the University of Messina organized a summer school this summer on gender budgeting. So they welcomed 23 PhD students. There are some professors who were there and could transfer their knowledge on gender budgeting. So this is an important side that of not only learning how to develop gender budgeting, but also how to teach it to other generations and to the future academic generations. Another university I would like to present you is a CALIPER partner. So I'm very happy to introduce a CALIPER partner who is as well committed on gender budgeting. It's another Italian university, University of Salento. And within the CALIPER project, they enhanced the gender equality strategy with awareness and capability to improve the enrollment and retention of women in science. So there was a specific focus in the STEM field. We tried, I mean, we had both, focus on gender budgeting in research institutes and universities dealing with in the STEM field, but also in a wider perspective on all the other fields of knowledge within the university. So where is the University of Salento, Anna Maria Cherubini, and okay. So I know that you are committed too on gender budgeting measures, so I would be happy to share your experience.
Yeah, so we did our first gender budget, starting with the assessment in 2020, and the update, the 2022 update will be published shortly. And we followed, and actually I must mention that this was an enormous help, at least for Italy, the guidelines provided by the Conference of Rectors of Italian universities. So they published quite extensive guidelines, indication, recommendation how to do an assessment for gender budgeting. And we follow it in full, and we added some specific indicators that we thought were relevant given in our university case. So indicator regarding, for example, the background, social and cultural background of students, indicator regarding their careers follow-up, indicator comparison of our data, of our university data with national data, and the data from university in a benchmark of university, so somehow homogeneous to us in numbers, characteristic, whatever. And so we added these indicators using available data sources, which were internal one, national one from the Ministry of Research University, and what is called Alma Laurea in Italy, which is a database providing information about the careers of graduates from Italian university. These data were already divided by gender. So the gender variable was already there. And this obviously is a great help. So at least in Italy and in university, we already have this. And what we realized was, not surprisingly, that our gaps, the gaps and the imbalances that we could recognize in our assessment, in our report, were more or less the same, the usual one you can see in, at least in our nation, with some fluctuations, some statistical fluctuations, some specificity of our university. So in particular, we have a very high glass ceiling index, which is bad, but we have a very high percentage of female students in scientific areas, which is probably a statistical effect because we have a lot of female students, but actually it's quite relevant. And then I pass you can.
Yes, so this is the gender budgeting is one of the recurring action of our GEP. So it will be proposed again the next GEP, and we will update all the data. And also it is very important that we had some money. This is the focus of this panel. There were some money dedicated to the actions related to the gender budgeting and the GEP, including some cycles of seminary or also other workshop events on the against violence or on interdisciplinary actions. And also a part on top of that, our governance put some other money for specific actions, like the implementation of a medical center with psychological support for students and any other kind of structure change needed for decreasing the gender gap. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We are almost at the end of our panel. We have 3-4 minutes left because otherwise I will be killed. And I would like to ask to Angela and Paula, do you want to add something to the experiences that you have heard?
I would make two very quick points.
Yeah.
Two very quick points. One about institutional capacity, and that's about the research and innovation offices, the support for research. What training, what capacity building is there to, as part of operationalizing commitments and gender equality plans and elsewhere, so that there is the knowledge and the confidence in those technical functions within our institutions to push back on the many research applications that will come forward across the university that don't begin to mention gender, however many strategies we have committing us to the Sustainable Development Goals or whatever other gender equality goals. And the second point is about to challenge within our discipline. And that's about the representation within our scholarly associations, who's publishing, who's not publishing. According to UNESCO, women in STEM fields publish less, are paid less for their research, and do not progress as far as men in their careers. So where's the challenge from us to funded research that results in the publications and the other outputs upon which we are measured, and that repeat the cycle in terms of access to research income that we've been hearing from colleagues. So I think some pushback as well to the editors of journals, who's publishing what, and what are we also building into our own curricula and syllabus, syllabi within our own courses. How many of us are teaching on gender budgeting and rights-based budgeting within management, within public policy, within political science. So as learning institutions, we also need to be better at learning ourselves.
Thank you. That's yours. Paula?
Yeah, well, just a couple of things too. I think we have advanced a lot in implementing GEPs, not very much in gender budgeting, so we have to advance in the terms, and also in the introduction of the gender dimension in research. And I think one step forward is to have real experts on gender issues in every commission, in the commission of the projects, and also in the commissions that evaluate professors, that evaluate us in career advancements, because many times it's not because women produce less articles, it's because they are valued less, and those articles are valued less. And we are, for example, pushing for one expert in gender studies in every commission of every field in the Spanish evaluation system.
Okay, thank you. I think we are in the end. I want to thank everybody who participated to the panel, who contributed to all the colleagues. If you want to learn more on gender budgeting, because I know now you will be struggling not to run to your university and do gender budgeting, you could already take our handbook in the entrance. If you've not already taken it, there are some copies left. And yes, that's us. And so thank to all of you, and good gender budgeting to everybody.